Okay, first what you need to know is this works for all PSP models, so 1000, 2000, 3000, PSP Street and PSP Go. All are done the same way. Now, first what you need to have is a PSP console, memory card. You can use either a official Memory Stick Pro Duo memory cards, or what most people likely want to get, Pro Duo adapter and micro SD card to put inside. Both work just fine. Now, if you have PSP Go model, you don't have to use memory card because it has 16 GB of internal storage, but for all other models of PSP you need to have the memory card. Now personally, I would not recommend using anything over 64 GB micro SD cards because that will make your PSP a bit slower when loading the menus every time you open the list of games, but that's up to you. Bigger cards will still work, otherwise just the same. You also need a way to connect the PSP to computer for file transfer, and this is where we have some differences between the models. With PSP Go model, you need to have the data cable to be able to connect to your PC. With other models, you can either use the mini USB cable and connect the same way as with the PSP Go, or you can use a memory card reader to read the micro SD card if that's what you are using. Now last, I also recommend you to have a full battery or plug the PSP into a charger. And of course you need a computer to transfer the files. So what you're going to want to do is boot up your PSP, go all the way to the left on the main menu, enter System Settings, next enter System Information, and there you have it. Now, if you have anything below 6.61 like I do here in this example, we need to update the firmware, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If you already have 6.61 installed, you can skip over installing firmware 6.61 part of this video. Alright, so now what we do is we download the PSP firmware 6.61, and I have a link to this website down below in the description, so check that out. All you need to do here is click download firmware 6.61, and once you have downloaded the file, locate the file on your computer. It's going to be called 6.61.pbb, so go ahead and rename this file to eboot.pbb, just like I do in the video. Okay, next thing we are going to do is we connect the PSP to the computer, and I'm going to do it with the cable here. So first, from the PSP main menu, go all the way to the left, enter USB connection option, and plug the cable to your computer and your PSP. Alright, now let's switch to the computer. Alright, so this is the root of my PSP memory card here you see on the screen, and from here first you open a folder called PSP, then after that you open a folder called game, and inside this game folder you will have to manually create a new folder called update with all capital letters like I do in the video. Okay, next we need to copy the eboot file we renamed earlier and paste it inside this update folder we just created. Easy enough to do, right? With that, we can disconnect the PSP, get back to the console to update the PSP firmware to 6.61. Let's do that. Now, if everything is done correctly, we can browse to the game section on the PSP menu and enter memory stick option. Here you should have the firmware update we just transferred using the computer. Go ahead and start this application and wait. It may take up to 20 seconds or so to start the application, and eventually you will get the this screen right here, and we press start and accept the user agreement, then press X to start the update. I'm gonna fast forward this part of the video now because this takes few minutes, but you will see the whole process on the screen. Okay, we are done with the install, and now we can press X button to restart the system and confirm if we have successfully installed firmware 6.61. Okay, once we have rebooted, we can once again scroll all the way to the left then enter system settings and system information, and we should have successfully installed firmware 6.61. Fantastic. Now, if you wish to do so, you can browse back to the game section on the menu and go delete the firmware file from the memory because it's not needed anymore. Now, let's move to the part of the video where we start installing the ARK4 custom firmware. Let's go. Okay, now we start the process of installing the ARK4 custom firmware. So in order to continue from this point on, you must have firmware 6.61 already installed. Okay, first what we want to do is download the ARK4 custom firmware files. So on your computer, enter this website right here. Links can be found down in the description. From the ARK4 GitHub page, we will click on latest release right here. Now keep in mind, for you this may be a later revision than 171 because this keeps getting updated all the time, but click here, then scroll down and click on ark4.zip file to download it. Make sure you unzip the downloaded archive, and now we connect the PSP to the computer, and once again from the PSP main menu I go to USB transfer and I connect the PSP to the computer, or you can use a memory card reader. Okay, here I have both my memory card open and the ARK4 zip we downloaded. You need to extract the archive. Down in the description is a link to 7-zip application if you can't unzip it and are using Windows. Okay, we start copying some folders. So first, from the ARK4 folder, we copy folder named ARK01234 and go from the memory card to PSP, then save data and paste the folder inside this folder. Next, again from the ARK4 folder, we copy ARK loader folder and copy it to PSP and inside the game folder like I do in the video. Okay, once you have done that, last thing we do is go from the ARK4 folder to PSP and copy ARK-CIPL folder, and it goes again to the game folder where we pasted the ARK loader. So paste CIPL folder there too, like you see in the video. Okay, with that, we will disconnect the PSP from the computer and continue on the console. Now we have all the needed files for installing the custom firmware, and first thing we do is browse to the game section on the PSP menu and enter memory card. If you use a PSP Go system without a separate memory card, this option is called system storage instead. First, you launch ARK loader from this menu. Wait just a moment and we are done. Now our system is temporarily modded, so if you just want to have the console modded every reboot, you are already done. Check from the system settings and system information and you should already have 6.61 ARK4 live installed. Now this mod will be disabled if you reboot the PSP and you need to launch ARK loader every time you wanna temporarily mod your PSP. If you press the select button, you should now also have VSH menu, but I think most people want to do a permanent custom firmware that stays even with reboots. And in order to do that, we have to go back to the game section and memory card, but this time around we launched the ARK-CIPL flasher. Once it opens, we have the option to install the CIPL, and from here you can also restore the original, but we want to install in this case, so we press X. And again, wait just a moment for PSP to reboot. And just like that, your PSP should now be permanently modded and you are ready to enjoy all the features custom firmware allows, from playing backups to running emulators and much more. So there you go, that was pretty easy and pretty fast and works for all PSP models. And next I'm going to show you how to back up your actual UMD games if you have a PSP model with the UMD drive, and also I will show you where to put your ISO file games to play them straight from the memory card. Let's take a look. Where to put your games inside the memory card may be something you are wondering, and that can be done by first connecting your PSP once again to the computer, and what you see on the screen is once again my PSP memory card, and what we need to do here is manually create a folder called ISO if it does not already exist. I have already recorded doing backups with this PSP, and that's why my PSP already had the ISO folder, but go ahead and create one if you need to. Then next, locate your PSP game you want to transfer. I have here my backup of God of War Change of Olympus, and what we do is simply copy this file and paste it inside the ISO folder on the PSP memory card and wait for it to complete. Simple as that. Now keep in mind, transferring games using cable connected to PSP can be very slow, so if you are using a micro SD card adapter and have access to a memory card reader, that is highly recommended. Once the transfer is complete, you can disconnect your PSP from the computer and your game can now be found from the PSP's game section and accessing the memory card, and again this works for all models of PSP. That's it, now you know where to put your games, and next we talk about how to back up your UMD games. Now when we back up games, I like to use an application called PSP FILER, and before we can use it we need to download it, and you can find the link to this website down below. So from here just scroll down and click on download the zip file. Next unzip that file and connect your PSP to the computer. Now you should have a folder called PSP FILER 6.6 Go, and all we need to do is copy this folder, go to PSP memory card, and from here first go to PSP folder, then game folder, and paste it inside here. With that we can disconnect from the computer and continue on the console itself. Okay, now PSP FILER should appear in your PSP's game menu. In the video I quickly confirmed my UMD drive works, and it indeed does, so go ahead and launch the PSP FILER application. Choose the language you want to use. I'm just going to go with the English option, and once you are in the application you can press triangle to access the different options inside the PSP FILER. Now in this use case we want to back up games, so we press right trigger which launches the UMD ripping option. Next you can choose what you want the file to be called. By default the name is actually the game ID, so the box of the game is going to have the same name, but if you wish to do so you can rename this to whatever you like. I'm just going to go with the default name, then just press the start and UMD ripping will begin. Now this can take a while depending on the game size, and in this example we have a very large game, 1.7 gigabytes, and it will take approximately 24 minutes. When the process is completed, your game will now appear in the game menu and you can remove the UMD and continue playing without it. Awesome. This backed up game now can also be found from the ISO folder if you connect to computer and want to transfer it for PSP Go, for example, or whatever use case you may have. That's about it for backing up games. Let's move on. Next up we take a look at how to add PlayStation 1 games to your PSP, and unfortunately it's not as simple as dragging files to correct folders. So we need to download utility called PSX to PSP, and with that we can turn PS1 backup files to eBoot files that can run on PSP. It's still pretty simple thing to do, so go ahead and download the PSX to PSP, and once again there is a download link down below in the description. Obviously it does not matter where you get the PS1 backup files, but if you are on Windows, backing up your own PS1 games from disk is easy to do and there are tons of tools to do it, but I guess IMGBURN is one of the top choices for people, and it's pretty much as simple as having a disk drive, putting in the PS1 disk, and from IMGBURN menu choose create image file from disk and then choose destination folder you want files to end up in. However, when it comes to Apple Mac users, things get way more complicated, and at the end of the video I have a section for Mac users how to back up your PlayStation 1 games and use PSX to PSP, so make sure you check that out if you are on Mac. Okay, after you have downloaded PSX to PSP, go ahead and launch it, and first thing you will be asked is classic or theme mode. Now this does not really matter at all, but this tutorial will be in classic mode. First open options menu, and in here I would not really change anything. We have a compression level slider here, which by default is at 9, so file sizes are actually compressed as we convert them. There may be some cases where you need to adjust this if you have issues with the game, but I would just keep it at 9 unless you encounter issues with some games. From the options menu, you can also change default folders for games and output files if you want to do that, but these can also be chosen with each game conversion as we go. Okay, so I have 2 classic games here as an example, and I chose Tomb Raider, one of my favorite PS1 games, and Resident Evil 2, which is also one of my favorites. Now, Resident Evil 2 is a multi-disc game, so with these 2 games I can show you also when we have a game with more than 1 disc. Alright, so now we're going to talk about how to use PSX to PSP. So first we're going to choose the file we want to convert, and in this case for me it's going to be the Tomb Raider backup I made. So I'm going to locate the file on my computer, and I'm going to choose a Tomb Raider.bin file that I have backed up myself, and it automatically fills in most of the details here. So I can just choose the game title. I'm gonna actually change. This is a greatest hits copy, but I'm just gonna change it to be Tomb Raider in the PSP menus. So here we can choose all kinds of icons and background images and everything. And these will determine how it's gonna look inside the PSP menu. And we can take a look at the preview here. So that's really nice. And these are photos that I created myself from the covers of the game. All right, now output.pp folder. This is where the file will end up. So this can be whatever you want it to be, but I just put it to the desktop. Alright, so when you are ready, when you have filled all the details in, you can just go ahead and press convert, and that's gonna do all the work for you. And you can see here I have the folder, and inside the folder will be the eBoot. So it always needs to be one folder, and inside that needs to be the eBoot. Okay, now we talk about if you have a game with more than 1 disc. In that situation, first you choose the disc 1 here, just like we did with the Tomb Raider. So I'm gonna go to my Resident Evil 2 disc 1, which is the Leon disc. And by the way, it's always recommended that you use the lower game ID game first if you have multiple discs. So for example, the disc 1 may be, in this case, it's SLUS00421, and the second disc is gonna be SLUS 00592, so I'm gonna choose that as a second option. And if you have a game with more than 2 discs, you would obviously just go ahead and continue here. But with Resident Evil 2, I just put these 2 discs here. You can see we got the game ID and the main game ID. These are going to be different between the discs. You can see the game ID is different between 2 discs, but the main game ID, from what I've heard, is that you should keep it, the lowest one should be the main game ID. If you have issues with something, you can always try to change this, but for the most part it should be fine. And once again, you choose the output.pp folder. For me it's desktop, and I have already created this, so I'm not going to convert it in this video, but you can see I have Resident Evil 2, and inside that will be eBoot file. And once again, you can choose your art for these games, and I created these art icons from I just took a photo of the Resident Evil 2 game cover from the front and back, and that's how I created these little icons here. So, but if you don't put any icons here, it's fine. It's fine. It's gonna work just the same, but it's not gonna have any art in the PSP menu. All right, then we can just connect our PSP and transfer these files to the PSP. Okay, so we just copy the folders that have eBoot file inside, and from the memory card go to PSP, and then inside game folder is where we paste them. Wait for transfer to complete, and with that they should appear in your PSP menu. Now we are ready to play some PlayStation 1 classics, so let's take a look. Now we have our PlayStation 1 classics ready to play on our PSP, which is fantastic, and as you can see, they appear in the menus with art and background images that I chose when using the PSX to PSP. Okay, let's try to play some PlayStation 1 here and take a look at a couple options available for you. And also with Resident Evil 2, I have to show you one setting that allows game to even run. Otherwise it will freeze every time in the loading screen. And also we will discuss changing the disc when the game has multiple discs like Resident Evil 2. So once you get in game by pressing PlayStation button or home button for earlier models of PSP, you can change some settings, for example screen modes from full screen to original resolution or even custom. I like to use normal screen mode because it fills the screen, but it's still 4:3 aspect ratio, which is the only correct aspect ratio when playing PS1, right? Tomb Raider is such a classic, one of my all-time favorite games for sure, and it plays great here on PSP. Okay, so with Tomb Raider, everything just works and runs like it should without changing anything, and that's true for most games, but there can be situations where a game has issues, for example launching or freezing. So I guess it was good for this video that I actually had issues getting Resident Evil 2 to work, and when I researched online, it seems like many people in the past before me had issues with that too. Now to fix this freezing issue with Resident Evil 2 specifically can be done by changing the disk load speed option to fast from the settings. It actually fixed the issue for me, and now this game works correctly, so that can be a solution sometimes if you have an issue with game freezing. So there you have it. That's how you can revisit some of your favorite PS1 classics on your PSP, or even discover some PlayStation 1 games for the first time. Awesome. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to PlayStation 1 is changing the discs. So if you have a game with multiple discs, like we have in this example, Resident Evil 2 has 2 discs. So if you want to change the disc, you can access the disc changing menu by pressing the PlayStation button. But keep in mind this, unless the game prompts you to change the disc, you can't do it on the fly. So if you play a game and at some point the game prompts you to change the disc, that's when you can do it. But when it comes to games like Resident Evil 2, that you can actually choose which disc you want to start with. So you got the Claire disc and Leon disc. So in Resident Evil 2's case, if you want to start with the disc 2, the Claire disc, you can reset the game and choose disc 2, and that will allow you to do that. But otherwise, the disc changing can only be done when the game prompts you to do that. Alright, so how to add Homebrew and emulators to your PSP? It is very simple. So first, of course, connect your PSP to the computer, and from the PSP memory card you go to PSP and then game folder, and these will always go inside the game folder, and basically you just copy the folder inside here. So when it comes to the Homebrew and emulators, they will always have a eboot file inside the folder. They may have other files as well, but as long as they have the eboot, you should be fine. So you just copy the folder inside here, and that's it. Just like we did with the PSP FILER Go earlier. And as you can see here, it appears in my PSP menu now. So that's how you do it. This last section of the video is dedicated to Mac users and how you can use PSX to PSP if you are on Mac. Now, PSX to PSP is Windows only executable, and there are many ways to run Windows programs on a Mac, but today we focus on a bit more simple solution that still works great for small programs like this, and may be a useful tool also in the future for you, especially if you find yourself often in the console modding scene where many tools and utilities may only have native Windows versions. So we do need to use an application called Whiskey, and a link to a GitHub download page can be found from the description. Go to the website and download the latest release like I do in the video. Now this tool is only for AM series of Mac computers. First, launching Whiskey, you get a warning that this app is downloaded from the internet, and are you sure you want to open it? Now this is completely up to you, but you have to open it to use it, and once you do, you will be asked, do you want to move Whiskey to application menu? And I wanted Whiskey to appear in my application menu, so I clicked move to applications. After that, I just press next to start the installation, and you need to have and you need to have Rosetta already installed, which I already had, and you most likely will be prompted to install it if you don't already have it. Rosetta is Apple's own official compatibility layer which is needed for Whiskey. Okay, once Whiskey install is done, you can create a bottle, and these are basically like small Windows environments that can run Windows executables, and you can easily create new bottles and delete them as you wish. You get to choose the bottle name, and for this specific tutorial I just went with PSX to PSP name and Windows 10 version. Last option is to choose where you want this bottle folder to be. I just went with the default option, but usually I create my own bottle folders somewhere where I can easily access it. Okay, once you have successfully installed your bottle, there are plenty of settings and stuff you can configure, but again, for this specific tutorial for PSX to PSP, we don't need to change anything for this to work. Now you can just go and click run and choose the PSX to PSP executable, or you can also bin program here to easily access them, but let's just click run and locate PSX to PSP executable file and run it. And just like that, we are already done and you are ready to use PSX to PSP on your Mac computer. Now you can go back to PSX to PSP section of this video and see how the PSX to PSP works. Okay, now we talk about how to back up your PlayStation 1 games using a Mac computer to use them for emulators, PSP, or whatever you want to use them for. Backing up PlayStation 1 games on a Mac is much more complicated than it is on Windows, and honestly, I don't know if a single video exists on YouTube that tells you how to do this on a Mac computer, and this works for both Apple Silicon Macs and Intel-based Macs, but there is one small difference between them that we will discuss later. So first, what we need to be able to do this is obviously have a CD DVD drive that can read our PlayStation 1 discs, and we need to have the games we want to back up. Okay, in order to do this, we have to install Homebrew to our Mac computer to get the access to cdrdao utility. And from the Homebrew link down in the description, you can read about it yourself more if you want to learn about it, and all of that can be found from the link down in the description. Basically, once we get it set up, we are going to do everything straight from the Mac terminal application. So this may scare some users right away, but it's not that bad honestly if you just follow my instructions here. So there are more than one way to install Homebrew, but for this tutorial, I recommend the package installer, which is super easy way to install Homebrew, and you can download it just like I do in the video, and I also have the GitHub page for the package installer in the description. Once you have downloaded it, we just go ahead and open the installer and go through the steps. Okay, we start the installer, and once we get to the installation part, we need to give our Mac password, and with that we are done. But now Homebrew gives us additional instructions, and here is where Apple Silicon and Intel Macs differ. So make sure you copy one of these commands that's correct for your Mac. Now, because I have an Apple Silicon Mac, I copied the upper one. Now, I would recommend copying these commands to somewhere where you can easily access them, because you need to re-enter this every time you close the terminal in order to access Homebrew in terminal. I will have all these commands also in the description, so you can use the description to copy commands, because we will have more commands coming up that are pretty much impossible to remember. So next we copy the correct command here depending on your Mac, and we open the terminal. You can quickly open it by pressing Command plus spacebar to bring up the Spotlight search and just type in terminal and launch it. Now here in terminal we will paste the command we just copied from Homebrew and press enter. Okay, now we have access to Homebrew, so we can install cdrdao by typing in by brew install cdrdao and press enter and wait. Okay, once the install is done, we can start the backup process, so make sure at this point you have your CD DVD drive plugged into the computer and the game is inside it. Now your computer may launch iTunes or something once you do that, but just ignore those and close iTunes. And next, inside terminal we can use command diskutil list to see our attached drives, and we need to figure out which disk is our CD DVD drive. And you can see in this example, my CD drive is disk 7, and keep in mind that for you it can be and most likely is something else than disk 7. But once you have figured out what disk it is for you, we must unmount this disk, otherwise cdrdao can't access it. So how we do that is next entering command diskutil unmountDisk, and then entering the correct path for your specific disk. So in this example for me it is /dev/disk7. Then press enter to unmount the disk. We should get the message it was successfully unmounted. Now this next command will start the backup process, so you can copy it from the description of this video. Now once we press enter, our Mac starts backing up the CD, and it will create files called output.bin and output.toc. Now we just have to wait for it to complete, but after that we will also convert the toc file to CUE file, which we can then use in emulators and wherever you want to use it. Once we are done, you can find these files by going to your main Mac drive, enter users, then choosing your username, and that's where you find both output files. Now we want to create a .cue file that PlayStation emulators, for example, use, and we can do that by entering this command to the terminal and press enter. And with that, you now have 3 files: output.bin, output.toc, and output.cue. I just delete the toc file because I don't need it, and move the output.bin and output.cue to where I want them. And then you can also rename them to whatever you want as long as both files have the exact same name. Just remember to move these files because otherwise they will be replaced once you back up another disk. And here you can see me renaming Resident Evil 2 Claire disk, which I also backed up to game ID name. But I could call it Claire or whatever I want, obviously, as long as both files have the same name. And guys, that is exactly how you can back up your PlayStation 1 discs on your Mac computer and use them in emulators or whatever use case you may have.